So, welcome to today's podcast. I'm excited to have this conversation. I have a wonderful guest here, Stephanie Walter. I think she's going to bring tremendous value for folks who are, thinking about entrepreneurship and certainly real estate. I was able to get connected with her through some of my contacts. I'm really grateful, Stephanie, for you to come share your wisdom, your background, and hopefully give my audience members a good tip or two to walk away as they're thinking about building their own wealth and bringing more freedom to their lives. So thanks for joining me today, Stephanie.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
I'm really looking forward to it. I know you're coming out of the Colorado area, beautiful area. We were just chatting about before we started today. And the one thing I didn't share as an introduction is the name of your company called Air Bay Wealth, which I found really interesting. So you were sharing me a little bit. What's that mean again?
It's the German word for legacy. It's a nod to my dad, who he passed away about 18 years ago, really young, but he was my main mentor. Just in that he was a second generation entrepreneur. My grandfather came over from Germany right before World War II, and he came with nothing. He had to actually work at a farm to pay his way. They back then they'd sponsor you. He'd come over, and then he ended up opening several businesses, small businesses. So yeah, I'm a third generation entrepreneur. So.
We'll definitely get into that. I definitely want to hear about that. Yeah, it's ironic. Yeah, I'm second generation here. My parents came over from Thailand back in the '60s and kind of started. So it's amazing how you kind of sometimes forget how long some families have been in this country. It hasn't been very long for a lot. Yeah. Right. And so cool to hear that story. So, obviously you shared a little bit about your background there, certainly your family, but can you share with our listeners just a bit about your own sort of growing up, right? Living in an entrepreneurial sort of environment through family, and kind of where that led you through your career and kind of where it's gotten you to today.
Sure. I was just like pretty much everyone else. I got a degree, graduated from college, just got a regular job, a W-2 job, and realized I was there for a while, almost 8 years, and had switched companies in the midst of all of that, and just realized that I would talk to my manager at the time, and they'd said, "You're doing so great. You're one of the best people at what you do here, and you're going to get a 2% raise." And I had just bought a house on my own, and went back and talked to my dad at the time, and just was like, "Dad, just." Everything was sort of hitting me, taxes and a 2% raise, and, kind of where they saw me going in the company wasn't really a place I wanted to go. And my dad was like, "Well, if you stay, they've told you what your path is, or you can, go out on your own and work for yourself, and really you decide what you're going to do with yourself." And so I gave my 2 weeks notice the day after I had talked to him, and I started an insurance agency in 2005. And at the same time, I invested in real estate, not in pretty much single family homes, because I honestly didn't know what I was doing. I just knew that real estate made sense to me. And so my idea was to buy and hold until I could retire, or until the houses were paid off, and then I could retire. And and then I was invited by one of my friends to a boot camp in 2016, where they were talking about buying apartments, because that was always an interest of mine. And in that boot camp, they talked about a syndication, and that kind of blew my mind. I'd never heard of that concept before. Just basically a group of people that buys a piece of property, commercial usually, that no one could do on their own. So I love this concept, and I signed up for the training. It was about 2 years of learning commercial real estate, and then closed on my first syndication in 2018. I've done 12 cents. We have about 300 million assets under management right now. And I am the part of the team that raises money. So it's just my partner and I raise the money, he finds the deals. So I was able to, meet these investors and learn from them. And I just realized that they were doing things different than I was even doing. So I changed some of my mindset and thought processes and did some of the things that they were doing. And as such, I was able to sell my insurance agency in 2021 because I'd replaced my income basically. And now I try to talk and educate people about kind of how to look at money differently and realize some of these myths that were sold.
Wow, that what an incredible story with that to going from the job to the probably, I don't know, maybe for you wasn't, but certainly for me, kind of jumping into kind of owning a business and running it. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that sort of transition, and then obviously get into the multifamily space. But let's start there. What was that like, that transition from the job to actually owning the insurance company and running it?
Well, it was it was difficult, it's everything is, I did have the model of my dad growing up who was an entrepreneur. But unfortunately, he passed away at the end of 2005. So I was just starting my business when he passed away. And so thankfully, he had a lot of close friends and that knew business, that were running their own businesses and certainly were great mentors. Just a couple older friends of my dad's that were wonderful mentors to me. I had listened to my dad growing up, but, still I needed some guidance. And it was a little rough those first 2 years, but, it's just kind of like everything in my life. You just put your head down and work really hard, and that's try to bring value to people and be connected to them. Mine was an insurance agency. So, just building those connections, building the way that I got referrals, it was all things that I'd heard my dad talk about when I was growing up. And he probably didn't think I was listening, but I was.
It's always like that too. I have kids who are getting older, and I sometimes want to share all these things, and I don't want to be preaching at them, but hopefully maybe a small percentage seeps in.
Yeah.
But you never, I guess it's sometimes, what's that, when the students are ready, the teacher appears type of mentality. Sometimes you're not always ready for it, but that's really cool to hear. And the thing I also grab from that too, which is so key. I mean, I think about school, like you're not supposed to cheat, right? Don't, God forbid, you collaborate with people or work together, because that's considered cheating. In the world of business, in life, it's almost like the key to success is sort of collaborating and finding folks who are willing to help provide mentorship or guidance. And obviously you still own your path, but I think more people want to help than not people when they're kind of building up and growing. I think most people like that, but it's just ironic always to me watching my kids is always a slight difference in that sort of mentality that can stick with people over their lives. But love to hear that story.
Well, I think just like getting having mentors in every area of my life. I mean, every transition I've made, I've bonded with people, and people that are successful, and there's many sayings about that you are, how successful you are is the people you're closest to. You just seek out the people that are very successful in what they're doing. And more likely than not, I don't know that I've ever had anyone who hasn't wanted to help. And they all have a real giving heart. And I say, if you want to be successful, find someone in that industry that's very successful and take them out for coffee or lunch or whatever. And they're more than happy to help usually.
Yeah, no, and to your point, that giving and sometimes us like giving first, right? Before to take, right? And having that sort of generous mindset, I think comes back around often, in some shape or size. That's what I've seen. Yes. So really, really positive stuff. So, it's really cool. So from the insurance business though, so you were able, based on your success in the real estate side of things, able to essentially replace a lot of the income your business was generating. Is that what I understand?
Yes, yes. And that was specifically inspired by the wealthy investors that I was working with and trying to, one comes to mind in particular that was just very giving of his time and advice and stuff like that. And really I wrote a chapter in my book about it, the mindset of a wealthy person as opposed to a regular person, a normal person like myself. It's accumulation versus utilization. I was accumulating, I was accumulating all these rental properties, but they weren't really cash flowing much for me. And that really wasn't my goal at the end of the day. It was hold on to them for 30 years and then pay them off. A lot of people, most people in our day and age do this with their 401ks. They just build it and keep it off to the side, and it'll be there when they retire, hopefully. But the wealthy people, especially this one wealthy investor, he views money as utilization. So that money is his employee. What is this employee doing for me lately? And and then when I looked at it that way, I'm like, I am not cash flowing at all with these properties. Wait, I gotta restructure this because they could be, the equity over owning them for such a long time could really serve me much better. And my goal really needs to be cash flow at the end of the day. So when I changed that view, that's how I was able to replace my income in the business.
No, that's great. It's funny. I don't know. I don't remember who said it or not, and you maybe can correct me. Like there's something like, you can't eat equity, right?
Yeah.
You cash flow to live and breathe and kind of live your life, and having equity, I guess, in the long run could be beneficial, for sure. But
Right.
whether it's personal finances or business, cash flow is king.
Yep.
We need it.
And
Right?
you're absolutely, yeah, that I haven't heard it phrased that way before, but yes, I mean, assets, that's what the average person's doing with their retirement is they're thinking of assets. But at the end of the day, the assets have to provide an income. And, again, that's another chapter in my book that I talk about, that the average person, they think they can take 10% out of that nest egg when they retire for income. It's actually the number most recently that I've heard from Morningstar, an independent consulting group, says 2.8% of that. So if you have $1 million, you're getting $28,000 a year, and it's taxed, very likely higher than today. So if you don't you got to think of cash flow. Absolutely.
Yeah, and to your point, like after tax cash flow,
Yeah.
right? Because you can often hear a lot of sayings from some financial entertainers, whatever. You can earn X 10% in the market or something. Well, what do you get to use and enjoy? That's really what matters. So you got to think about that, the unfortunate tax bite that we may have to face at some point. And I know a lot of folks are kicking the can down the road, but then then it makes it tough to really enjoy that money because you don't want to pay the tax, right? It's kind of keeps you in jail a bit, leading to that. So yeah, definitely I want to cover some more of those. And I'm just apologize, I didn't mention it, your book Shattering Money Myths, which I love the title of it, how the wealthy invest. And I think most people want to know that, not just the typical advice. So let me switch before we get into a little more of those. I really want to, when you finally realized, okay, well, now I'm cash flowing. I was able to replace my income. And so then tell me how you made the leap to sort of get into the actual syndication space and capital raising and starting this second business, really. So tell me more about that.
Oh yeah, well, I sort of did these things simultaneously. So in 2016 is when I did the boot camp. Then I kind of did my regular job, or my was running my business. But on the side, I had a vision of learning syndications. First of all, I was really passionate about it. So yeah, I did. It was training. I just signed up with a company. There's a lot of companies out there. This is RE Mentor is the one I got involved with.
Mm.
And so you go to all these different classes that take several days. And I don't know, I think there were 6 classes over the 2-year period. But you're also networking and meeting people that are partners. I made a mistake initially with my first syndication I did in 2018, and I did it by myself. And again, where you were saying teamwork and all of that stuff, that's my personality, is that I want to do everything myself. But when I did the first syndication, I was like, this is impossible to do it by yourself. It's like, I thought that I would, I was have a nervous breakdown or something going through the whole process. So I was connected with my partner within that group, education group, and he's excellent at finding deals, negotiating, getting the deals. I'm great at, raising money. He doesn't want to, he's a very shy person, doesn't really want to interact with anyone. So we had really complementary skill sets. Yeah. And so that was definitely a blessing to find him.
No, you're right. I mean, you said a mouthful there with the staying in, the areas that you're most competent, you're skilled at, you're gifted at, and it probably keeps people super motivated too. Like, I hate doing things that I detest, like it's so energy draining, and I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, there's somebody in this world who actually maybe enjoys this. Yeah. Let him or her do it, because they're gonna probably do it way better than me. I've kind of tried to stay humble in that sense, because I was probably like you. I was always trying to do everything, and I felt like it was like a badge of honor to some degree. Oh yeah, I could do it and figure it all out. And I said, well, it's quite limiting in a lot of ways, I've come to realize. And I said, I'm humble enough to know there's so many good experts and people to work with. It's so much more rewarding and successful. So tell me more about the deals that you've done now, and you're actively, you and your partner are actively getting deals and raising capital. That's an ongoing thing today, correct?
We have done it to where we raise for each individual deal. We haven't done a fund. So right now we're just sort of taking a pause, I think, just because of the market. And we did 12 deals in the matter of 2019 was my first deal I did with him. So in the course of 4 years, that's a lot. So last year, since July of 2023, we've just kind of taken a little break. That's when I wrote my book, and just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen. We believe there'll be some opportunity possibly later this year or early next year. It doesn't make sense to buy something for us, because now our investors are very, they know what kind of returns we get. We certainly don't want to lower their expectations. So, we got to keep our underwriting and all of our quality control where it was in the past. So we don't want to grow anymore unless we find a good deal.
No, that's good. It's smart. And there's quite a bit of uncertainty at the time of this recording, and interest rates are higher than we're used to, right? For most people, they'll realize these artificially low rates have been around for quite some time.
Yeah.
So things are sort of shaped. So remind me too, the area in terms of, obviously in the multifamily space, commercial space. I mean, where do you guys typically focus? Is there class of type of properties you guys are more comfortable with, and what's that look like?
We do Class B apartments in Florida. We also did a retail in Florida that did actually better than anything we've done up to this point. So now I think we'll still look at multifamily, but I'm intrigued by retail, service retail, which we bought that, and 2 years later was COVID. And it still did incredibly well. So it really matters the market that you choose. And, we look at all those boring things that our investors usually don't care about, but just market stuff is really important to us. Demographics, population. those things we look to buy in growing markets for sure.
Yeah, and that's why you're looking and breathing this every day. So keeping a handle on what's going on, where obviously most investors or maybe they got their full time jobs or other things. So it's tough to keep track of all of that. So
Yes.
that's why you have experts like you guys to do that. And it's interesting you said retail. I mean, especially as with COVID and all the things that have changed. Like I see a lot of malls that are starting to become a little less full.
Yep.
Right, the retail level, but there's still people that have to go to certain retail stores, right? It's hard to replicate, right? Things of that nature. So it's not like a dying sort of world, right? I mean, there's
Yeah,
just
yeah. The funny thing is, people get those things in their head. Absolutely true with the malls. But actually, what we talk about, like different classes of apartments, like the B apartments, we pick them because traditionally they withstand recessions really, really well. And the thought process on that is that the top of the line is A. So when a recession hits, someone wants to downsize, they move into a B. A B is usually located in a nice area with good schools. So then when everybody lost their homes in 2008, 2009, they moved into B. And rents never go down in the areas that we're looking at. But back to retail, there's different types of retail. So we think about your neighborhood grocery store, and there might be a little mall, or not a mall, just a little strip center next to it that will probably just look for fun. It probably has a restaurant in it. It might have a hair salon, a nail salon, a yoga studio, something like that. Now, what those things all have in common is people have to go in to use them, get their hair cut, things like that. So we call those service retail, and those have done really well. But there's lots of different things that haven't done well, but that's what our job is, to figure out what's working and what isn't.
Yeah, no, it's sometimes these things we just take them for granted, or broad strokes of assumptions that we just don't ever look that deeply into. Right? And that's where you build. So that maybe gives a good segue to talking about some of these myths. I know you kind of mentioned a few already, the accumulation versus utilization of wealth. And so one of the things I ran across, and you help me if I misquote this, but the difference between personal finance strategies versus corporate finance strategies, and where people get this right or wrong. So can you elaborate more on that? Because I know it's really interesting to read about that.
Yeah, the personal, finance is, we're taught. I think of maybe someone like Dave Ramsey or Susie Orman, where they talk about, investing their money. I'm not sure where Dave gets his numbers from, but like he says, to invest to get 12% a year, investing in mutual funds. I'm not certain where those numbers come, because I don't see them in that perspective. But corporate people, they do everything differently than we're told to. Just put our money aside, put it with a financial planner. Most of the time people don't even know what it's invested in, nor a bigger part of that is what fees they're being charged. So they literally abdicate all of responsibility of this fairly big nest egg for people, and they don't even understand what it's invested in, what the returns are, what the fees are. And these are all very significant things. I show in the book how, there's 3 guys, and each of them one has a fee of 1%, one has a fee of 2%, one has a fee of 3%, and how that eats into the returns over time. And literally the one that has the fees at 3% will work, for the rest of their lives, or at least another 10 years longer than the person that kept their fees at a reasonable level. And it's your money. You can look at these things and find them out. But the corporate strategy, they do a lot of different things. They invest in lots of different things. When we say diversify, they truly do diversify, not within the stock market, but they diversify in things that most people have never even heard of, which is like Insurance. Insurance is a big one. Life insurance. Okay. Some of the biggest buyers of life insurance are corporations. Now, why does a corporation need to have life insurance? I mean, they do it because they can put money away in a tax free vehicle where the money grows tax free. It grows tax free. They're able to take the money out depending on what kind of policy they're in. More likely than not, they can still be making money on, like, they take the money out for a loan and they still get the returns on their policy if it's set up right, which it is, of course, with the wealthy people. And so they'll be able to take this money out and not pay any fees for taking it out. And the money, their underlying money, is still making money. It might be a little bit too much information, too detailed, but essentially what I'm trying to say is they use different vehicles. They tend to, I like this word with the wealthy and corporations. They tend to know what they want to achieve with their money, and then they reverse engineer it back. So I would like my money to grow tax free. I would like to have access to it. I would like it to be liquid. And when I die someday, I would like the money to go to my heirs. And sure enough, they can get these things done. And so I think that's what's the most remarkable thing, is they just seem to be aware of, doing things differently than, say, not to pick on Dave Ramsey, but just the average people that are telling you what to do with your money. Yeah.
I 100% agree. And yeah, and for a certain subset of folks in this country, I think some of the things that, say, a Dave Ramsey shares, I think they're good for to a certain degree, right? Around spending less than you make, right? Those are all very basic good things to be considering. But I certainly wouldn't say that he's helping people build massive wealth. I think to your point, the way I took is that there's businesses are what, for a lot of wealthy people, that's where they make their wealth, building businesses, running businesses, and certainly real estate. And so how do people think about business? Well, a lot of things, they want cash flow. They're trying to use proper leverage. They want to reduce taxes, right? All these things that we assume to be profitable that they're doing. Why would we not try to apply them to our personal financial lives in the same capacity? And what if you can couple both of them together? And so I look at those things. It's, do you mention the banking, like the life insurance and sort of the banking side? Well, what do banks do, right? They're not sitting on cash waiting to accumulate and appreciate. Mm-hmm. They're moving it, right? They're using money and leverage and moving money around, marking up money. Well, why not take that as a clue, right? That we could potentially do something like that. So really, really powerful stuff. Any other big myths you think, Addie? I know you cite 10, which I'm sure there are more, but like in your book, like what are some of the, maybe another one or two you find that are, really when you share with people kind of shake their head and look at you like, huh? Like, what is that?
I mean, I think the one that hits a lot of people strongly is that wealthy become wealthy because they invest in high risk investments. And actually, nothing could be further from the truth. They want an asymmetrical return of their money, but with the very lowest amount of risk. They invest in very low risk. They're very much a proponent of Warren Buffett's, famous saying, which is, rule 1, don't lose any money. Rule 2, never forget rule 1. And that is 100% them. They're very, and not even that they think that wealthy people are super smart. They, obviously some of them are, but they just understand this not losing money, being very understanding of an investment that they go into. They are investing, say, syndication example. They understand, they come and they talk to everybody that's involved in the process. They want to know what our track record has been. They want to know, they want to know these details. These are things that the average person couldn't go out and ask their financial planner about the, mutual funds that they're invested in. Like, what is the long-term strategy? What is the exit strategy? Who's running this? What is their background? You could ask someone, they probably don't even understand anything about that, and it's actually some pretty simple questions to understand this. And again, they utilize insurance products actually to their benefit, and these insurance companies have been around doing this for hundreds, at least over 100 years, maybe even longer. They're very stable companies, and so I find it interesting that a lot of people are willing to, invest in our syndications pretty easily and readily, but the insurance concept is still too foreign for them. So they don't want to do that. I haven't put my finger on why. But yeah, that is something that I have a whole chapter dedicated to in the book. And then I think the other one is just thinking that there's nothing that they can do about their taxes. The taxes are going to be just what they are, and there's nothing you can do about it. And there are some amazing things that can be done about it. You can actually, in one product that I mentioned in the book, you can have a bank if you have, if you qualify basically, but you can have a bank that pays probably 80 to 90% of your life insurance premium. And the reason for that is it generates tax-free growth and tax-free retirement income for the rest of your life. I'd say 99% of the people I talk to, either wealthy or non-wealthy, has never heard of this strategy. But that's one that's been used by corporations for a really long time. But yeah, I mean, I think those are some good myths, because taxes are definitely, and what I notice about my wealthy investors, as opposed to, because we work with people at all levels of, wealth, is they just have a strategy for their taxes. The wealthy people will be like, okay, what kind of cost segregation am I going to get out of this? Or how are we exiting, and having a plan for the money before the investment ends, and being very, facing the taxes kind of head on, and coming up with a strategy that is, that can be very powerful for people.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I often come across folks who are, they for that, the tax issue, maybe going to their CPA that is more focused on historical reporting than future planning. Mm-hmm. And they're told they have nothing they can do, right? That's typically the response. And then the conversation ends at that point.
Yes.
Right. Until they, maybe, feel so much pain related to it, they actually open up, and listen to conversations like this, and meet folks like you to help. So at least open up your eyes to the possibilities of ways to do it. And I honestly believe, to your point, yeah, there's a lot of smart people. What I see where people get it is when they're finally open to it, open to exploring it, and then figuring out if it's right for them. It may not be, but I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of folks who will follow the conventional wisdom and would never, ever even come across anything unconventional, because it's too scary. And unfortunately, I think that does hurt people's wealth. So, if anything, for people listening, and at minimum, I would say certainly go and grab Stephanie's book. It's a good read. It's called Shattering Money Myths: How the Wealthy Invest. And it will probably open up your eyes to a host of different things that, you wouldn't normally hear in a typical financial piece anywhere. This is where the wealthy spend their time, right? Thinking about new ways to, keep more of the wealth, protect it, and then to your Airbnb approach, create some legacy planning, right? And wealth for future generations. So Stephanie, you shared so many great things here. Anything you'd love to that we haven't discussed that you'd just love to leave with our listeners? As we end this podcast?
I think, just kind of examine your situation that you're in, and just with my wealthy investors that learn diversification. Diversification doesn't apply to just having a lot of different stocks or mutual funds. It should really have, the 401k was never intended to be everybody's sole retirement. It's a relatively new concept. I think in the 80s is when people's pensions were, that whole system was changing, and then they introduced this. So have, real estate, have a sector in real estate. If you don't want to do the real estate, then find someone like myself that does it, professionally. Look at these other methods of, tangible investments. You can actually invest in businesses where you get to know the person that's running the company and, having some control. I'm a big advocate of taking back control of your finances at the end of the day. And there's many other things you can invest in, in insurance products that have lots of guarantees in them that certainly go hand in hand with retiring. Having guaranteed lifetime income is necessary when you're planning a retirement at all. But yeah, just be more balanced and diversified and take control of your finances, I guess, is what I'm thinking.
No, it's great, and I think for those who are listening on this podcast, that's what I think most of them are looking for, right? Ways that they can gain more control and freedom and use of their money. And, I call it hop back in the driver's seat.
Yes.
Right? Unfortunately, a lot of people are in the back seat or maybe not even in the car of their financial life. And they deserve to be for themselves and their families and for things they care about. So it's doable, and you just need to be open-minded and meet folks like Stephanie and others who will hopefully shed some light and give you some power to do something and improve what you're doing. So Stephanie, I really appreciate your time and sharing your story, and really enjoyed our conversation. I think there's a host of other topics in there for a next round of this at some point. So many great things to talk about, but I appreciate your time and all your wisdom on the show. And thanks again.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining me on this episode today. I really am grateful for you as listeners to the Perennial Pride podcast. I hope you're getting some tremendous value out of it and hopefully pushing you along your journey to financial freedom. I put this podcast together really to help you get more educated around your finances so that you feel empowered to live the life that you really want. And if you like the content that you heard today or watched, then I would encourage you to go to my website, perennialpride.com. There's tons of other content there. And you can access my book, Wealth Beyond the Numbers. You can buy it there on my website. It's a aggregation of a lot of great tips and tools I've learned to not only build my wealth in my accounts, but build wealth in my life and abundance and joy, and something that has a lot of my experiences in the journey that I've been on personally. Hopefully that can be also of value to you as you sort of move forward. So thanks again for being a Perennial Pride listener, and we'll see you on the next episode.